Hi, my name is Diego Solano, and this is my project number three. Okay, so for project number three, I chose to analyze the popular video game Grand Theft Auto 5, which I often played when I was younger. And also, I chose this game because it's rich with stereotypes, gender norms, a single story, and it depicts Western society, specifically Southern California, in a parody of modern life. And since this game is so large, it follows the plot of three protagonists. And I will primarily be focusing on the stories of Franklin and Michael, who are completely opposites in terms of socioeconomic status. I also chose the film Straight Outta Compton, since this movie covers the struggle of African Americans living in the hoods of Los Angeles during the 1990s. And similar to Grand Theft Auto, this film is rich with stereotypes as well as situations that are parodies of real events. Okay, by comparing Grand Theft Auto and Straight Outta Compton, using the neo-Marxist analysis, it is evident that the lower socioeconomic people of America have been portrayed in a manner that is correlated with violence and disorder. Okay, so first, let's begin with Grand Theft Auto 5. Actually, let's begin with Franklin's story. Franklin is an African-American character who lives in the hood of Los Angeles streets. In GTA, Franklin's area is flooded with gangs and violence, where gunfights are quite common and characters dress in a similar manner. Also, everyone in the hood is predominantly darker skinned, with little to no white characters generating in these areas. On the other hand, there is Michael, who lives in a wealthy white, or who's a wealthy white male, who lives in Beverly Hills, and he dresses in a kind of luxurious manner. And in this area, there are no gangsters, there's no violence, and all the characters in this region behave in an elegant manner and dress modestly. And ultimately, what this piece is trying to say is that American culture has a large socioeconomic gap. And with this comes a difference in behavior and prevalence of violence. Okay, let's go to Straight Outta Compton now. Now, Straight Outta Compton is a film that follows the story of the infamous rap group NWA, and how they transform hip hop and their rage-inducing lyrics and struggles. And they ultimately challenged the status quo at the time by rapping lyrics such as, F the police coming straight from the underground. And when I'm done, it's going to be a bloodbath of cops dying in LA, which at the time was outrageous to many listeners, especially middle class and wealthier families who had like the privilege of living in safe areas. Therefore, this group, NWA, challenged the hegemony that was occurring during the 90s by empowering the streets of LA with lyrics of revenge and violence against, the oppressing forces that they had to struggle with. Okay, so for Straight Outta Compton, I want to focus on the police harassment scene, which actually challenged the status quo that white cops were out to get black hustlers, out of racial motivation. And this is because in the scene, the dominant, bad cop is a black man who is using violence to arrest the African American protagonists for no good reason at all. And it's actually contrary because the person defending them was actually the white manager who was arguing that they did absolutely nothing wrong. Therefore, it actually goes against, this mentality that is engraved in African American culture that only white cops are out to get them. Therefore, this film isn't biased against the single story type thinking that white cops are out to get black people. Okay, so how do these two forms of media compare? Well, they are both, channels that depict the lower socioeconomic area of the West. And in both channels, African American culture and attitude is the primary focus. And not only that, it's kind of exaggerated with violence and disorder. In the film Straight Outta Compton, the first scene to be shown is a police raid, on a trap house, where a gunfight immediately begins. And while I'm not saying, this type of violence doesn't occur, I am saying that, the streets of Los Angeles, or the street culture in Los Angeles at least, offers more than violence and chaos. And just because, this film depicts a group of young men experiencing a series of violent events, that doesn't mean that everyone from the streets of Los Angeles has lived this lifestyle. And the same goes for Grand Theft Auto 5. Just because a neighborhood is lower income, that doesn't mean that there are gangsters at every street corner with guns out to get you. But what this does suggest about American values is that, one can say that Americans kind of associate lower income neighborhoods with violence and gangs just because, the media portrays this instance, I guess. But this is because, the single stories of gang violence have depicted lower income neighborhoods in such a manner. And Straight Outta Compton does a great job showing that not all kids from the streets become gang members. And it does this by, including the stories of kids like Dr. Dre who became a successful producer instead of, joining the streets of Los Angeles. And Grand Theft Auto kind of struggles with this single story depiction of the streets of Los Angeles, and they kind of get away with this depiction by creating an entertaining aspect of the game, such as bank heists and missions. Okay, this has been my project number 3 analysis. Thank you for watching.